So you guys have probably already heard the news by now that at Computex, NVIDIA just launched its latest graphics card, the RTX 3080 Ti, and announced the upcoming, very shortly, within a week from now, RTX 3070 Ti. It's kind of interesting for a couple of reasons. One, they never launch cards at Computex. They almost always have their own standalone events for that sort of thing, separate from any other event. And two, it might be really an interesting time to try and introduce a new graphics card or two at a time when nobody can get their hands on it. So today we benchmarked it. We're gonna talk about some of the ideas behind it, where it slots in, some buying information, I guess, and whatever else we talk about in this video. It's gonna be an interesting one. The Elite XG270QG from ViewSonic breaks the traditional ugly appearance of gaming monitors by providing an ultra-clean design while still delivering gamers the features that they want most. Features like a 1 millisecond response time, IPS 165Hz overclock display, black brushed aluminum stand with tilt and swivel, mouse and keyboard cable anchors, and customizable subtle lighting. To learn more about the XG270GQ from ViewSonic and to see current pricing, click the link in the description below. Before we get started with the business, I want to remind you guys that we are doing a giveaway right now, not just of an RTX 3090, but a complete system upgrade, including an i9 Intel CPU, motherboard, memory, power supply, obviously the graphics card. So if you guys want to enter to win our RTX 3090 and upgrade package, then you guys can check the link in the description below. It'll take you to a video where you guys can learn all about it. And make sure you're subscribed, because obviously there's going to be stuff that we're going to be doing along the way that you guys are not going to want to miss. So let's talk about the RTX 3080 Ti. We've got two flavors on the table today. We have got the Founders Edition card right here, which basically looks exactly like an RTX 3080, with the exception of the fact that it's got these diamond cut edges here on the face that unfortunately you don't see when the card is inserted traditionally into a PCIe slot. If you use a vertical mount, then you'll be able to see it, but they didn't carry that design onto the back, which to me is very unfortunate. I feel like they kind of went halfway on that one in terms of committing to something that looks very nice, actually. I do like the matte look of the 3080, but the 3080 Ti, as soon as I took it out of the box and I saw that diamond cut edge, I was like, that is gorgeous. But unfortunately, they didn't put it on the side that you actually are gonna mostly see. The RTX 3080 Ti from EVGA. This is the For the Win 3 Ultra variant. This is their top of the top, highest tier that they make. They have the XC3, obviously XC3 for the Win 3, and then the Ultra. This is a dual BIOS card. It has a standard BIOS as well as an OC BIOS. Now, for the sake of our testing, we obviously switched it over to OC. There's absolutely no reason whatsoever that I would leave it on a standard BIOS if the OC BIOS option is available to us. Also worth noting, they got rid of the clown lips. If you remember, we kind of made fun of their Ultra cards by having the red outlines here, which look very much like the tail section of a McLaren or a clown. But they got rid of it, and as you can see, it's just nice and black now. Unfortunately, they left the red line on the back plate, but I guess, you know, some old habits die hard. Moving on, this obviously is gonna carry custom boost tables, boost clocks. It's gonna be the exact same specs as a 3080 Ti. However, the custom variants like the For the Win 3 Ultra, it's gonna have, especially on the OC BIOS, it's gonna have a faster clock speed. Memory speed is gonna be the same, but it's gonna have a more aggressive fan profile. It's also got a much more aggressive cooler than found on the 3080 Ti, which is what I wanna talk about next, because one of the things that made me interested in temperature testing with the 3080 Ti is the fact that this has the exact same dimensions as the 3080. Now, if you recall, and I don't have it on the table here because it's in my system, the RTX 3090 Founders Edition card is a triple slot card, not a 2-slot card like the Founders Edition 3080, and it's extra tall. And the reason they did that is because of the core density of the amount of CUDA cores and tensor cores and RT cores and ROPs and everything that are inside the architecture. They went with a big, giant, beefy cooler to keep it as cool as possible. Now, when it comes to 3080 Ti, it's only 2 less SMs. It's only 256 less CUDA cores. It's got 12 gigabytes of memory versus the 10 gigabytes of memory found on the 3080. However, they brought the cooler down to the 3080 size. Now, the 3080 has significantly less CUDA cores than the 3080 Ti. So I was really kind of concerned on what the temperatures were gonna look like because of the fact that we are seeing the smaller cooler designed for the smaller core and really shaved down version of the 3080 versus 3080 Ti, which, let's also make note, this is a 3090 that's shaved down. It's, like I said, 2 less SMs, 256 less CUDA cores. For all intents and purposes, the 3080 Ti is a 3090 that has like a sliver of performance chopped off and half of the VRAM. It uses the same 12-pin connector that you found on all the FE cards. It requires two 8-pin PCIe power plugs to be plugged into it. So temperature testing on this one was something I really paid attention to. It is slightly heavier because it has obviously the extra chips on there. It's got extra power traces and such, and we noticed it actually holding the two side by side that there was a slight amount of weight difference there. But the FurtherWind 3 Ultra obviously has got the big mama cooler on there. The FurtherWind 3 Ultra also comes with an anti-sag bracket that is compatible with various chassis. There is a QR code that you can scan. It will tell you what cases that it's compatible with, but that's to help with anti-sag. That way you're not dealing with your card trying to bust your PCIe slot off of your motherboard. Obviously cooling on this is going to be fine because of the triple axial fan, the 3-slot and massive cooler on here. It does use 3 8-pin PCI Express power cables, so you're going to want to, I know I said PCIe Express, whatever, extra power. So you're going to want to make sure that your power supply obviously is capable of handling that. When it comes to other features found on here, you have the usual suspects found with EVGA cards. It has got the RGB or the ARGB header on the back, so you can have your RGB obviously be synced with the card control, and an extra fan header back here so that if you want to run any case fans or something off of the ramping up of the card, so as the card ramps up, you can ramp up case fans with it so that you can get a better exchange of air rather than relying on the CPU like most logic does on motherboards, then you can plug that in there. We also have on the table here our 2080 Ti. The reason for that is because that is the full generational jump of the 80 series Ti models from 2080 Ti to 3080 Ti. But it's an interesting one. Names aren't always directly comparative. Sometimes somebody might share a name or a series name like 80 Ti, but be a completely different family of card depending on where it slots in. So let's go ahead and take a look at the benchmarks here so we can see how it compares to a 2080 Ti, 3080, 3080 Ti, 3090 FE, as well as the 3080 Ti for the Win 3 Ultra. Now, as always, NVIDIA is very active with the reviewers to make sure that they're not having any sort of problems. They've never been like, well, you should do this and you should say this. They've never been that way. So I want to make sure I want to make that very clear. I know there's been some issues in the past with reviewers and NVIDIA and the way that they've handled themselves. We've never experienced any sort of strong arm or influence on the way we should present something. We've always been very free on the way we handle that, and we're very transparent about that. But one thing I did ask them is specifically, and this was obviously before the keynote, was pricing. And just like we expected, Jensen wanted to announce the pricing, so there wasn't in the reviewer's guide or anything. I predicted $1,199. I was correct on that. Nick, you're my witness. I did predict that before they announced it, right?
Yeah, I have a note.
He has a note. So anyway, $1,199. MSRP. We are going to compare MSRP. We are well aware that the only people that are going to get them for anywhere near this price are the very first purchasers, and then they're going to start reselling and scalping, and then the way we've seen the last 6 months go, 7 months go, is going to continue to be the case. I guess we're almost up to 8 months now on this. Anyway, I digress. When it comes to the pricing, it's interesting because what I started to mention with we get support from the engineering side, it's not their marketing team that we get help from, it's from the engineering technical marketing side, so that we are able to ask technical questions and get answers from the people that know the card and the product itself, not how to market it. They said it was around 2% slower than a 3090. And that really got me like kind of thinking here, because a 3080 is anywhere from 6 to 8% slower. So that was a very narrow window to aim for, to slot a card like the RTX 3080 Ti in between the 3080 and 3090. Now, of course, we're comparing FEs there. What's interesting, if you look at the charts, obviously, is if you take the $1,339, it's funny, we're back up to like the 20 series pricing, right? But at least they're much more powerful custom cards, MSRP anyway. When we compare the 3080 Ti for the Win 3 Ultra, it matches the 3090 FE like pretty much in every single test, and even beats it in some. That means the extra core clock that we're getting on this card is definitely making up for the 256 less CUDA cores and the 2 less RT cores, and I forget how many tensor cores less, but it'll be on the screen here. Obviously, the clock speed was able to make up for that deficit. Now, that also means that this is compared to the FE, right? So if we took the 3090 for the Win 3 Ultra and compared it to the 3090 FE, we would see the same kind of uplift, right? This is a difficult one because it's one of those things where, like, if I had a choice to be able to buy a $1,500 3090 FE, again, hypothetical MSRP, please, we can't possibly address all of the craziness happening out there in the pricing, so we're going to go off the MSRP. But hypothetically, if I had the choice to buy an RTX 3090 FE for $1,500, or the 3080 Ti for the Win 3 Ultra from EVGA, which has the dual BIOS and faster clock speeds, although it is lesser spec across the board, I would much rather save the $170 or $160 that we can to get a just as fast, and in some cases faster card. Now, you might have noticed in our test bench or our test suite here that we did not include 1080p. And the reason for that was we were reaching constant CPU bottlenecks on our 10900K, which, yes, is not the fastest CPU out there, but we feel like it still gives us pretty real world experience, and constant engine cap. So at 1080p, we were seeing significant amounts of CPU bound happening when it comes to GPU bound. So GPU bound means your score is limited by the GPU. It's bound to the GPU's performance. But there becomes a point when the GPU starts waiting on the CPU. And when that happens, it becomes less GPU bound. You see the CPU bound number come up. And we were seeing that obviously just across the board with 1080p. When it comes to 1440p, we even started to see some of that in certain titles, like Shadow of the Tomb Raider being a perfect example. 1440p numbers were very similar to the 3080 Ti and the 3090, and even the 3080 being near that, but the 3080 not being far behind the 3090 in 1440. That's very much an engine slash bottleneck there when it comes to the engine and how fast it's able to actually present its or render its frames and such. It's not until you get to 4K that you start to see a little bit of separation between the 3090s and the 3080 Ti's. And again, that could have everything to do with VRAM. That could have to do with the extra 256 CUDA cores, the 2 extra tensor cores, the extra RT, or the 2 extra RT cores, the extra tensor cores. And that really starts to show itself when you can fully max the graphics card and the engine will allow it. So that brings us to the obvious discussion here about availability. Now, and by the time this video went live, unless you're already camped out at like Micro Center or Best Buy, or you're mash and refresh on Best Buy's website, they're the only place that you're going to be able to buy the FE card, Micro Center and Best Buy, at least when it comes to the United States, and Best Buy in Canada. You're just going to, it's probably too late already for you to even try and get a 3080 Ti. I'm sure as soon as the dates were announced when Jensen discussed, the lines already started forming at Micro Center. You're gonna see videos, I guarantee, of scalpers versus people in line and them getting into fights, because they always do. Scalpers always come in and they act like kids, and then they try and say this sign-up sheet doesn't mean anything, and they try and be assholes to get their cards, and that's fine. Normally people are willing to fight them and everything works out okay. But EVGA fortunately has their Elite program. So it's, again, probably too late for the 3080 Ti, but if you want to get your hands on a 3070 Ti, then check out the Elite program. I'll put a link down below. This isn't really a sponsored bit of the video. I know for a fact through people that I've talked to and the amount of people that have told me that they've been able to actually get an MSRP-esque card from EVGA through their Elite program. That way you have 24 hours start to buy a graphics card. You get notified and you have a window which to respond. If you don't respond, then that card moves on to the next person in line. It's right now being touted as one of the best ways to actually get your hands on a graphics card. So again, it's probably too late for 3080 Ti. Might as well sign up for it now though when it comes to the 3070 Ti. But you can bet these are going to be out of stock instantaneously. You're gonna probably have the best bet getting one, either signing up for a program like I just mentioned or camping out at Micro Center. Either way, you obviously know that there's not going to be enough of these to go around. And I know you guys are mad. I know you guys are really mad that they're even coming out with this card. And there's a couple ways you can look at that. You can say, well, at least there's 2 more cards coming out, 3070 Ti, which will be coming out on June 10th. Our review will be just before that. And then the 3080 Ti. Now, the problem is, the reason why people get more angry about like 3080s being out of stock and 3070s and stuff is 3090 was already unobtainable for many people, for most people, because the pricing is just $1,500. It's a Halo card, it's expensive. A lot of people weren't even considering it to begin with before the inflated scalped prices. So a lot of people were kind of like, why didn't they just use the manufacturing of the wafers that were here to make 3080 Ti? Shave them up or cut them up even more and make more 3060 Ti's or make more 3070s. I'm sure there's an engineering reason for that, and I'm sure NVIDIA may reach out and explain why that wasn't the case. But you would like to see, I'm sure, as consumers, them pump the market with more mid-range cards that people are trying to get their hands on, rather than coming out with more high-end cards that people already couldn't afford, even if pricing wasn't screwed up to begin with. Because even as it is, 3060s are going for $1,000 when they're supposed to be a $400 card. Or a $380 card or something like that. So I would have liked to have seen them maybe forego the 3080 Ti, which was already delayed from its original launch. It was supposed to come out earlier this year and it was delayed for obvious reasons. I would have liked to have seen it scrapped entirely when we started to see the way things were going, and just pump that mid-range card market as hard as possible, because that is the bulk of your sales of any manufacturer, whether you're AMD, NVIDIA, Intel, CPU, or GPU. The mid-range market is the bulk of your sales. And then you get your outliers of the enthusiasts or extremists like myself that will always go for the high end, or people that are always going to go for the super low end. Probably 70% of your mass is buying in that mid-card range, whether you're talking like 3060 all the way through 3070, somewhere around there. And yes, 3070 would be mid-range at this point now, because you have several cards above that. I would have liked to have seen that, but obviously that's not the case. So this is where you guys sound off in the comments below on whether or not you think this was a dumb move. I think I already know the answer. I think you guys are just mad. I think they could have come out with this card and been like, we're gonna give it away. And you guys would still be mad, because you know you're still not gonna get it. So there's a lot of emotion involved in this cycle of graphics cards in this family, where I ask that you guys do your best to put your emotions aside and at least be objective in saying what the card is and what it's supposed to do. It's obviously doing it, but you can't get your hands on it. They are straight up unicorns. If you want this card, you better already be standing in line at Micro Center, or you better be sitting there hitting refresh on Best Buy, specifically for the FE card. But I have been told as well that one of the reasons why this family was pushed out is so that they could bump up the supply as much as possible. If they had launched this sooner, obviously there'd be less cards available. They're doing a very diligent job, at least, of trying to get as many cards out there as possible. And with the light hash rate or the LHR versions of these cards, which the 3080 Ti is obviously going to have, which is the light hash rate keeping apparently them to not be profitable I don't know. I've had people reach out to me and already say at the current hash rates, even cut in half, it'd still be profitable, but I don't know. I don't do coin mining, so I couldn't tell you. We just gotta hope that maybe there's gonna be more lucky people out there able to get their hands on these cards. So anyway, sound off in the comments below your true opinions about this card. How do you feel about another top tier card being launched at a time like this? I think it's a card that was already in the works, and they probably already started producing these months ago, which means they kind of had to go forward with it anyway. I don't even know if it would have been possible to take the cores that were in these and turn them into mid-range cards. I don't know. I know the process is the process, but I'm a little ignorant to what it takes to create a lower end card versus a higher end card. You just cut it smaller? I really don't know. So maybe if you know, you can count off the cores down in the comments below. Anyway, thanks for watching, guys. Don't forget our giveaway though. At least someone's gonna get one of these bad boys right here and a full system upgrade to go along with that. Thanks for watching, guys. As always, we'll see you on the next videos this week, and we'll see you next week with the 3070 Ti launch. I don't know how much physical copies Best Buy is, physical versions. How many cards Best Buy?